So with the number 1 overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft, the Jaguars went Travon Walker, of course, edge rusher out of Georgia. Of course, the controversy here was I think most people had Aidan Hutchinson as the better player, would have taken him number 1 overall. The Lions got Hutchinson at number 2 overall. The Jags had just picked Trevor Lawrence the previous year, so they weren't in the market for a quarterback. And the Travon Walker hype just continued and continued and continued all the way up to the draft. And, a couple weeks before the draft, it was like, no, they're really going to do this. They're going to pick Travon number 1 overall after he had not a ton of college production, but one of the best NFL combine workouts of all time, at a high weight, fast, strong, explosive, change of direction. Everything was incredible from Travon at the scouting combine.
Yeah, fascinating process because obviously, as you said, the quarterback was never on the table. Number 1, there weren't any. Number 2, they already had Trevor Lawrence. So we were always talking about a different position to go number 1 overall for a while. It's sort of very early on, it was like Aidan Hutchinson's going to be the guy. And then there was a brief period of time where the betting favorite was actually Evan Neal. People were expecting him to go number 1. And then it did start to become clear that Travon Walker was going to be the guy based, as you said, off that absolutely spectacular workout, which is, again, to remind people, literally the most impressive edge rusher workout of all time, right? But there was nothing that he didn't have as a workout composite between size, speed, explosiveness, change of direction, the arm length, like everything you want, he was sort of 99th percentile in. And there are other guys that have had spectacular workouts, but there's always one element of it missing, right? Whether it's change of direction. So that's Shamar Stewart this year. Did no change of direction stuff. Change of direction stuff's a question mark for him. He's got all the other stuff. Or maybe it's arm length, or maybe it's explosiveness, or the 40 time, or the height, or whatever. Everybody's got one element missing. Walker had it all. So when you're debating Travon Walker versus, say, Aidan Hutchinson, on the one hand, you've got Aidan Hutchinson with this incredible college production and career. On the other hand, Travon Walker is literally unprecedented as a workout specimen, but didn't have the on-field production. That was effectively the debate. And I think most people would have said, look, pick the guy that's already the good football player over the guy that, if he becomes a good football player with that workout composite, can be special. The Jags went in a different direction because that's the guy that was running the draft room there.
All right, so here's the objective view of Travon Walker. He's been a hot button issue for us because we always said absolutely we would have gone Aidan Hutchinson there. Let's using PFF grades over the 3 years, right, since they've been in the league. Travon Walker among edge rushers with at least 1,000 snaps. I used 1,000 snap cutoff here since 2022. Ranks 72nd in PFF grade, 71st in PFF pass rushing grade, and 61st in run defense grade. And that's kind of his calling card, right? The Travon Walker apologist will say, well, he's an elite run defender and he gets 10 plus sacks per season. What else do you want from the number 1 overall pick? Well, it's the down-to-down production from Travon Walker that hasn't been there at the level of a number 1 overall pick, right? That type of production, if you got that late first or into the second and you're heading into year 4, you could say, okay, that's not bad. Even, Kayvon Thibodeau is higher in all those ranks, but similarly, you could say kind of disappointing for maybe a top 10 edge rusher in what he started out as. On the other hand, I do think Travon Walker is coming off of his best season. And for a player with that athletic profile, the speed to power that he shows, which is unbelievable sometimes, right? He does have some unreal freak plays on tape. It does bode well that maybe heading into year 4, this is, Travon trending in the right direction and has a chance to continue to progress with the athletic profile and I would say the production starting to catch up the way I view production, not based off sack totals, but based off of snap to snap, the way he's played.
All right, that's enough of that, Steve. Over 50% of the people listening to this are not subscribed right now. So click that button and then we can get back to whatever it is Steve's telling you about. Yeah, I mean, Walker is becoming a better player. He is improving. And at this rate, he might be a very good player. Like the ceiling, I think, is still very high because of that athletic profile and the fact that he could become special if he realizes that. First and foremost, I think it's very clear that Aidan Hutchinson was the correct pick. Like they made the wrong selection at number 1 overall. Hutchinson was the better pick at the time, would be the better pick now. And the only thing that could change your mind on that is the fact that Aidan Hutchinson just broke his leg in a severe manner. And we don't know if he's going to be the same guy again. But Walker has been nowhere near the player that Aidan Hutchinson has been in the NFL level. Even like literally, no matter what way you look at it, you can look at it in pass rushing terms. It's not even close. In run defense terms, I would argue Aidan Hutchinson has been the better run defender as well. There's no way you can slice it where you say that that Travon Walker has been the better selection thus far. But I do think the gap is closing in that Travon Walker is moving in that direction. Run defense, I do think, is his better area of the game. I think the pass rush is still a work in progress. But you can see the power, you can see the quickness, the explosiveness. So yeah, like I think he is a solid player at the moment who plays an absolute ton of snaps. Like that durability is I still think it sounds like a pejorative, but I do think that there's value to this. It's his biggest strength right now is that he's always playing. The durability, he's going to play 8, 9, 1,000 snaps a season every year and be out there making positive plays. But we're still a work in progress to get to like dominant impact playmaker.
Yeah, I wanted to add that too. So 6th most snaps in the NFL among edge rushers since being drafted for Travon Walker. Almost 900 as a rookie, 869 as a second-year player, 911 last year. So he's been very consistent as far as being out on the field and putting a lot of reps in, which does hurt efficiency numbers sometimes, right?
Sure.
So again, when we're talking about value, he has average efficiency numbers, Travon Walker, but doing that for almost 1,000 snaps per season does add value because, yeah, you're out there and it will affect how well you play on a snap for snap basis, the way that's tracked.
But again, just to directly compare him to Aidan Hutchinson, like he's rushed the passer sort of 40, 50 times more than Aidan Hutchinson throughout his career so far because he always plays. But Hutchinson has like a season's worth more pressures, right? So he basically has double the pressure rate or the pass rush win rate of Travon Walker over their NFL career so far. Again, that might be closing, though it might not be because Hutchinson's pace last season against backup tackles was like off the charts absurd. But theoretically, that's probably getting closer together. But again, so far, it's not even close. The one thing I will say for Jacksonville, at one point, as I said, the theory was they might take Evan Neal at the top of this draft as number one. It's the correct pick there. Aidan Hutchinson was the correct pick overall, but if the choice was Evan Neal versus Travon Walker, you got the right player there.
Well, we'll get there. I mean, I don't know if we're going to cover A.J. Brown specifically in this draft, but my take coming out of this in a draft where there were questions at the top, you and I had a pretty healthy debate about, we'll talk about Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner, and would you take a corner number one overall? We had a healthy debate around that. I said, look, I think the Eagles coming away with A.J. Brown's the best first-round pick in this draft. That was my opinion on draft night. I don't think I would refute that at this point. You would argue Hutchinson for the Lions, but A.J. Brown, of course, the Eagles have gone to 2 Super Bowls, won one in a draft where there weren't those slam dunk prospects at key positions. The fact that the Eagles traded for an A.J. Brown, I think, ended up being the best move. And it was very difficult for the Jags with the number 1 overall pick, I think, to feel, unless they went Hutchinson and got the same kind of production that Hutchinson's brought to the Lions, very difficult for, I think, teams at the top to feel great about, the top 5 value for non-quarterbacks in this draft going in.
It was a weird draft where, like the players that normally surface at the top of these drafts that in a non-quarterback year were not like they weren't actually there, and it was other positions where the stars are. But you made that pitch that if A.J. Brown is as good a first-round pick as anyone's going to spend, we were asking the question throughout the draft, like, why is a guy like Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley, why are they not in the conversation for number 1 overall, right? Why is a cornerback not in the conversation for number 1 overall? And actually, those guys have become 2 of the best players from this draft and probably should have been in that conversation for number 1 overall. We asked the question with the wide receivers, though I don't think those were quite as spectacular a prospects as the corners. Why are the wide receivers not in that conversation? This was the interesting thing. Like, the star players from this draft were not the players that were considered at number 1 overall. And this, again, maybe maybe this is in a weird draft like that. Maybe you start to change the rules of what you should do at the top. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.